You ever just stopped and wondered, what is a thought? I mean, really, what is physically happening inside your head when you suddenly remember a face or you get a new idea? Well, today, we're going to dive deep into that exact question. We're going to unpack the incredible story of the neuron, the tiny fundamental building block of your entire brain. So, to kick things off, let's start with a puzzle. It's a puzzle that actually stumped scientists for decades. I want you to picture your brain. Is it one giant continuous superhighway where information just flows everywhere all at once? Or is it more like a massive, bustling city made up of billions of separate, individual buildings that somehow have to communicate with each other? You know, this very question sparked one of the biggest arguments in the entire history of neuroscience. For a long, long time, some of the smartest people in science had completely opposite ideas about it, mostly because the technology they had just couldn't give them a clear enough picture of what was going on in there. So, on one side, you had what was called the nerve net theory. This was the idea that the brain was that seamless highway, all connected. But on the other side, you had the neuron doctrine. This theory argued that no, the brain is more like that city, built from countless individual cells. These little buildings we now call neurons. And without better tools, there was just no way to know who was right. Okay, now the way they settled this is an amazing story of scientific genius and rivalry. In 1873, an Italian scientist named Camillo Golgi, who was a huge believer in the nerve net theory, came up with a new staining technique. And by a complete stroke of luck, his stain only lit up about 1% of the cells it touched. This was key. Then along comes this Spanish scientist, Santiago Ramón y Cajal. He has a brilliant idea. What if we use Golgi's own stain, but on the brains of newborn animals, where that city of neurons is way less crowded? And bam, suddenly, everything was crystal clear. Cajal proved the brain was made of individual cells, basically defeating his rival's theory with his rival's own invention. And this quote just perfectly captures how huge this was. Cajal is remembered as the person who made this cellular study of mental life possible. Think about that. Before him, we were arguing about the very nature of the brain. After him, the entire field of modern neuroscience could finally get started. All right, so we've established the brain is a city of individual cells. Now let's zoom way in and meet one of its most important citizens. It is time to meet the neuron. You can think of a neuron's job as a really simple three-step process. First, it has these things called dendrites, which are kind of like the neuron's ears. Their job is to receive signals from other neurons. Second, the cell body, which is like the neuron's own little brain, has to process all those incoming messages. And third, if that combined signal is strong enough, the axon, which acts like the neuron's mouth, sends the message on to the next guy. Receive, process, send. That's pretty much the entire life of a neuron. And get this, these amazing cells aren't just locked up inside your skull. You've got specialized neurons all over your body called receptors. They're in your eyes, turning light into signals. They're in your ears, turning vibrations into signals. They're all over your skin, turning pressure into signals. They are literally our window to the outside world, constantly reporting back to headquarters. So, if neurons are all these separate individual cells, how in the world do they talk to each other? How do they form these circuits that let us think and feel and do everything we do? Well, it all comes down to a really precise, really fast, and kind of elegant little move we can call the neural handshake. But here's a totally mind-bending fact for you. Neurons never actually touch. Seriously, there is a microscopic gap separating them, and it's called a synapse. Imagine reaching out to shake someone's hand, but you stop just a hair's width away. That tiny, empty space, that's the synapse. So, how does the signal get across that gap? Well, it uses these special chemical messengers called neurotransmitters. When an electrical signal gets to the end of one neuron, it triggers the release of these chemicals. They shoot across the synapse and tell the next neuron to fire up. It's like a lightning-fast chemical relay race that lets the signal jump from one cell to the next. And here's the really crucial part. These connections are not random at all. A neuron doesn't just shout its message out and hope someone hears it. No, it forms very specific, dedicated links with other neurons. This is how the brain builds specialized circuits for everything it does, from recognizing your mother's face to remembering the lyrics to a song you haven't heard in 20 years. We've talked about the structure, we've talked about the connections, but what is the signal itself? What is this message they're sending? Well, it's a tiny but incredibly powerful spark of pure electricity called the action potential. And the only reason we know about this is because of this incredible technology called microelectrodes. I mean, these are probes so unbelievably tiny, they can get right up next to a single neuron and just eavesdrop. They let us listen in on the secret electrical language of the brain. So when a neuron is just sitting there, waiting for something to happen, it's not really off. It holds this slight negative charge, right around minus 70 millivolts.
You can think of it like a coiled spring or a drawn bowstring, just primed and ready to fire at a moment's notice. That's its resting potential.
But when it gets a strong enough signal from its neighbors, boom, the action potential happens. The charge inside that neuron skyrockets from -70 all the way up to +40 millivolts. It's this massive electrical flip, and the entire thing is over and done in a single millisecond. Just poof.
Now, here is the most important rule about the action potential. It's all or nothing. It works just like a light switch. It's either completely on or it's completely off. A neuron can't fire a kinda small signal or a really big one. It fires at the exact same, full strength every single time, or it doesn't fire at all. Period.
Okay, so that leads to a really interesting puzzle, doesn't it? If every single spark is identical, how on earth can your brain tell the difference between, say, a gentle tap on your arm and a really hard push? How does it communicate intensity?
Well, the answer came from the brilliant work of Edgar Adrian, who actually won a Nobel Prize for this. He figured out that the brain doesn't change the size of the spark, it changes the rate of the sparks. A gentle touch might make a neuron fire a few times a second, but hard pressure will make that exact same neuron fire like a machine gun. The information, the intensity, it's all in the frequency.
Okay, let's pull all the way back and put these pieces together. We've gone from the brain's grand architecture all the way down to a single electrical spark that lasts a millisecond. So what's the big takeaway here? So here's the story of a thought, in a nutshell. Your brain is a city, built from individual neurons. Each one has that simple three-part job: receive, process, send. They talk to each other across tiny gaps using chemical messengers. The signal itself is a uniform, all-or-nothing electrical spark. And, this is the key, the meaning of the signal isn't in how big it is, but in how fast those sparks are being fired. And that leaves us with one last kind of profound question to think about. If the fundamental language of the brain is just this simple series of identical, all-or-nothing sparks, basically a binary code of on or off, how does that simple system, when you scale it across billions of cells and trillions of connections, create the entire symphony of human consciousness? The richness, the detail, the infinite colors of your experience, all from a simple spark. That right there is the magic and the ongoing mystery of the human brain.